Hey, you two. I don't know what's the other one.
I don't know. I've been out of the org for going on 20 years now, but I was in for a really long time. And one of the most annoying things for me on the inside was the music. So there were 2 different songbooks from the time I was born until the time I left. And I understand that since I left, there have been 2 or 3 more versions. It seems like they have to keep changing their songs for some reason. I don't know. I do think that if the witnesses had critical thinking skills at all, this might give them a bit of a clue. But no. Anyway, you might wonder why the songbooks annoyed me so much. Well, part of it was that I was actually born a musician. This is not to say that I'm particularly talented, but I have a good enough ear that kingdom songs bother me because their melodies across the board just don't make sense. And some of their lyrics are just ridiculous. I'll give you some examples momentarily. Now, as an aside, it's not just witness music that gives me this feeling. Josh Groban had a runaway hit in, I think it was 2003, called You Raise Me Up. You've no doubt heard it. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. Right? Right? My problem with it? Danny Boy. It's frickin' Danny Boy with different lyrics. Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling. Listen to it. I promise you. Moving right along, you probably know by now that I loved chorus as a kid in school, even though I could not officially sing the great majority of the repertoire. I always thought it would be so cool if we could just have a choir at the Kingdom Hall. But the closest we ever got were the 2 sisters who taught piano lessons and sang 2-part harmony from their seats in the middle of the Kingdom Hall every meeting. Sometimes they were really good, and sometimes they really weren't, but they were the musical highlight of the Jehovah's Witness experience, no doubt about it. Now, at home, we sang bluegrass with my dad, and he wasn't born Jehovah's Witness, so he actually knew some old-time hymns, and so we still sang Amazing Grace behind closed doors, just because it was a good song. That's where I learned how to sing harmony and to experiment with sound and to love music. I can remember being 3 years old and sitting on the floor next to my dad, and he played banjo or guitar and sang whatever came to mind. And sometimes it was an old song from way back. Sometimes it was Johnny Cash. Sometimes it was Waylon. Other times it was Amazing Grace. But strangely, never kingdom songs. Kingdom songs just don't lend themselves to improvisation, and they don't beg to be sung like some songs do. They're just an excuse for music, a conditioning tool. But at least the old ones were catchy, some of them. We weren't even allowed to experiment with them if we wanted to. I got yelled at once as a teen because another JW youth and I were at a gathering, and we improvised sort of blues-ish version of one of the Kingdom songs. I can't remember which one it was even, but it probably wasn't that good. But we got reamed. I mean, reamed for doing it. Just no. So anyway, that's the background I'm coming from here, right? In preparation for this video, I did a little Google searching on Kingdom Melodies, and I have to say that I was absolutely dumbfounded, shocked. I am floored, y'all, that now there is apparently a Bethel choir. Are you effing kidding me, people? At least they put one together to do choral renditions of the newer Kingdom Melodies. And there are scores of YouTube videos, y'all, of people playing Kingdom Melodies on guitars and pianos and singing them in different styles. I mean, what the actual... I shouldn't be surprised because they used to make fun of other religions for televangelism, for making materials for kids, for all the stuff that they are now doing. Next thing you know, they're going to be doing Jehovah's Witness rock or Jehovah's Witness rap. Mark my words. And when they do, I will never, ever stop laughing. Hello again. Little change of venue. I had to come down to the basement so that the kids would stop dive bombing my video. So to continue, when I was little, We were singing out of that little fuchsia book called Singing and Accompanying Yourselves with Music in Your Hearts, which is a really long and clunky title. So we just called it the songbook. And it contained such gems as, "Be glad, you nations, with his people, to be sung jubilantly with vigor. Be glad, you nations, with his people. God's kingdom is at hand. Christ Jesus reigns upon Mount Zion. Rejoice in every land. The 7 Gentile times have ended. Their kings have had their day. Be glad, you nations, with his people. Jehovah's king holds sway." Now, I always wondered, who were these nations with his people? Since the whole point was that all the nations were going to turn against us, his people, so who exactly were we telling to be glad here? And don't even get me started on the gymnastics that have taken place with the 7 Gentile times. You know what? I don't even care. Moving on. Another perennial favorite from that book was called From House to House. From house to house, from door to door, Jehovah's word we spread. From town to town, from farm to farm, Jehovah's sheep are fed. And that's exactly how you had to sing it too. That very singy song. Can you just picture like cartoon animals? Yeah. These songs are in fact so repetitive that 30 to 40 years later, I can still sing them. Weird sharps and flats and all. Let me tell you, many in the congregation could not do those sharps and flats and strange melodies. Oh no, they could not. Ooh. That's why we needed a choir, people. The songs in the Pink Songbook, looking back, were slightly militant in nature. There were lots of talks about like armies and marching tempos, and I even heard that some of the tunes were actually cribbed from Christendom's hymns. Ooh. Of course, the favorite, the ultimate JW theme song was called We're Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not sure if it's still in the newer songbooks, but I would kind of be surprised if it wasn't because it was such a big one. And my sister and I used to belt this one out as loud as we could when we were little kids. And so one time, I remember when we were pretty small, we were out in our backyard playing, which actually meant fighting as usual, screaming at each other and rolling around. My sister called me a butthole, and so I called her a boogerhead or something, and she pinched me, and then I started screaming bloody murder, and our mother shouted out the back door that we had better behave or she was going to come spank us both. So we decided that we really needed to clean up our act, like right now. So we got on the swings and started swinging together and how high we could swing, and one of us, I don't know which one, probably me, had the bright idea that we should start singing. So then the other one joined in. So here we are, singing at the top of our lungs and swinging. We're Jehovah's Witnesses. We speak out in fearlessness. Ours is the God of true prophecy. What he foretells comes to be. Dum, dum. Now imagine, my mother was mortified and told us what a reproach we were because the whole neighborhood could hear us calling each other buttholes and booger butts, and then we start singing about Jehovah in the same breath. Nowadays, if I were to sing that song for real, I would have to add a coda. What he foretells comes to be, except 1914, 1925, 1975, 1995, 2000, and it's getting too long to continue with overlapping generations, etc. I think it's a great addition, don't you? Well, then, in 1984, this new songbook came out, and it was a very unpleasant shade of brown on the cover, and it had actually a somewhat better title. It was called Sing Praises to Jehovah, and its tone was slightly less militant, but the stirring marches were still in there. They did keep some of the same songs. I think they changed a few of the lyrics here and there. Be Glad You Nations was still in there, but they did scrap a large number of them, and they added some new ones. And one was another quintessential favorite. It was the one that they played at every single funeral. Life Without End at Last. This song was so annoyingly repetitive and really kind of goofy. Can you see with your mind's eye people's dwelling together? Don't they know people is already plural? Anyway, sorrow has passed, peace at last, life without tears and pain. Sing out with joy of heart, you too can have a part. Live for the day when you'll say, life without end at last. Does anybody else notice that the first couplet doesn't rhyme, but everything else does? That annoyed the shit out of me, always. So, in that song, there's another line that goes, food will be there, all will share in what our God provides. I mean, gosh, what a comfort, guys. Food will be there. That is not a song lyric, by the way. That is a flyer for a neighborhood potluck. Surely there could have been a more lyrical way to say this, or something else you could say there that would make the song, like, fit together somehow. I don't know. And pardon me, but it never felt exactly right to be singing out with joy of heart at a funeral. It never seemed appropriate to me, even when I was at my most conditioned. It's kind of weird. In fact, some of these songs were so weird as to be considered drug-addled. One example is with song number 23 in the Brown Songbook, The Bible's Hope for Mankind. So it starts out in this really minor key. See if I can remember it. Dark days are here. Man lives in fear with dire expectation as to all creation. Bum, bum, ba-da. We're all going to die. Yeah, so you get the drift. And then, without warning at all, it completely switches gears and goes up like 4 octaves to... But the Bible gives us a reason for cheer, due to all the proofs that the kingdom is near. From the eyes of man, God will wipe every tear. Raise yourselves erect, you have nothing to fear. Okay, first of all, that is insane. Secondly, the word erect has no place in a religious song. It does not fit. It's full of connotation, just no. No. And there's so many unnecessary words in there. Like, who says, due to all the proofs in lyrics or poetry, for crying out loud? Is this stuff written by a random text generator or something? I mean, good grief. These songs, in fact, sound like they were written by accountants. Like, I think maybe one day they needed material and they didn't have any musicians on staff, so they just said, hey, Joe, you over in accounting, you don't look busy. Why don't you and Ezekiel from legal go write some songs? And there's so many examples of this. One of my other favorites, with some hilarious memories attached, is song number 105, Hail Jehovah's Firstborn. And the last line in that song is, and stimulate our brothers to hail God's firstborn too. Okay. I want to know who decided that stimulate was the best word they could possibly use there. And were we regularly discouraged from the platform from stimulating ourselves, much less our brothers? Really? It's just wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And everybody knew it. Everybody in those congregations knew it because nobody wanted to sing that line. So it always came out like, and our brothers to hail God's firstborn too. There was always, that one boy. There was one boy in our hall when I was really little who was kind of a troublemaker. And he liked to sing, let it all hang out at the end after the last note. And he actually did that several times before his mother just turned around and backhanded him into next week. It was pretty funny while it lasted. Anyway, I don't have a lot of experience with the songbooks that were released after the 1984 one, for obvious reasons, since that was still current when I left in the late 90s. But when I went to my grandfather's funeral last year, I unfortunately got to hear their new funeral song. And I must say, I was a little less than impressed. it's another one of those windy melodies that doesn't seem to resolve or ever make any sense. And also, I am one of those people, in case you haven't noticed, who has a tendency to laugh at inappropriate moments, even when I really do not want to, especially when I really do not want to laugh. I mean, I was totally heartbroken at this funeral, but halfway through that song, my husband, who has never been Jehovah's Witness and is very perplexed by them, actually, kind of caught my eye and did his little eyebrow thing, like, what the? So I leaned over and whispered in his ear that I was just waiting for those goddamn cartoon birds and woodland creatures to come chirping down the aisle at any moment, and we both almost lost it because it was so true. Yeah, I know, that's pretty awful, but you know what? It just is what it is, and it was pretty funny. Anyway, I watched these videos back as I'm editing them, and I noticed that I tend to, like, roll around a lot, and some of you may wonder why. It's because when I'm sitting here, particularly in the basement, I put the computer on the pool table, along with all my crochet projects, and I'm sitting on a giant exercise ball. So it's really fun to, sit on the exercise ball and just sort of bounce around while I'm talking or roll around like this. So sometimes when I get going and la, 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 I'm sorry if I give you whiplash trying to follow me or anything. So y'all, I downloaded the old songbooks and one of the new ones. And oh my God, there is enough material here to keep you a YouTube channel in business for ages and ages. I mean, there are a few of these songs that really need a full treatment. They need a whole video just to themselves. And you know what? I'm going to do it.